Guys, it wasn't Yashima again. But unfortunately, it was someone worse. Someone bad at storyboarding. Look, let me be transparent. I really enjoyed this episode from a writing perspective, but this was clearly a very low priority one in the production. Sandwiched between two focal episodes, this thing got handed off to an outsourced director with the show's weakest animation supervisor, no dedicated chief AD, and Yashima himself was at the top of the key animation list. That is a combination that screams, everyone else was busy doing the big stuff, and so what we get is the weakest looking episode so far. In a show with a bad production environment, these kind of episodes look terrible. Nothing gets cleaned up, nothing moves, and if it does move, it melts. In a strong production environment like Daima's, an episode like this is not only still reasonably polished, it even has the scope to deliver a couple of memorable moments. It just isn't great by the show's overall standards. The director and storyboard for this episode is a man called Ryota Kawahara, who belongs to the studio Baka, a teeny tiny support studio made up of about 10 people based out of Tokyo. He's actually been around freelancing for a long time, having directed similarly low priority episodes on things like Attack on Titan. Alas, none of the episodes he's done from things I've seen have been very good, so I guess that kind of explains the results here. I've been giving Yashima a fair bit of shit for his flatboarding in places, but simultaneously, I've praised the fact he does actually have some nice ideas and tends to come up with some pretty creative action. It's not usually great, but it's serviceable and even sometimes pretty good. Kawahara's board just has nothing here. It's the same flat shots again and again and again. Nothing has any depth. Everything feels small. The most creative it gets is during the action with the POV shot as the guard falls over, which is a cool idea, but then you have Glorio punching with his right arm only for the continuity to break in the next shot with his left hand landing. Or shit, the shot where Goku turns and it cuts for no reason. Like, what are you doing? Why would you cut between two front-facing angles? So much of this boarding and direction feels like it jumped straight out of the 90s with its grungy filters, copious split-screen framing. I mean, even the episode ended with the harmony cell, the painted frames you'd normally see in older anime for dramatic moments and episode closes. You'd think this would be some fitting nostalgia for an old series like Dragon Ball, but to me, it all just came across as dated rather than a cool, nostalgic throwback, like you might see in something like Kill la Kill. I think what really lightens the blow is that the CG vehicle camera work is really well integrated, which at least helps some moments feel dynamic, and of course the background art throughout the show has continued to be absolutely stunning, so even if the framing is not necessarily interesting, it's still nice to be wowed by these great landscapes. On the animation side of things, this episode is headed up by Naoko Yamaoka, who was previously the animation director on episode 2. If you cast your minds back, you may remember I wasn't super keen on her style. It's not unpleasant or broken in any way, but it's clear she's not someone with a background in drawing Dragon Ball. She's mainly someone who came up in the industry drawing Precure, so her understanding of the series' shape design is just off enough to throw my obsessive brain into a tizzy. Maybe this draw over helps convey that a little bit. It's not some super era Kitano-esque disaster, but the eyes, the jaw, the small hair, they're all just off enough that they come together to form a Goku that is okay, but definitely a far cry from how he should be drawn. Thankfully, Nakatsuru, despite going so hard last week, does still manage to correct a decent bit of stuff here, but I think it's Yuya Takahashi's assistant supervision that really elevates this episode out of questionable territory. As I said the other week, he's so good at sticking to the sheets, so his presence is very much welcome on an episode like this. I think the best part of the animation this week, though, was actually all of those shots where the line weight was super thick. If you're not aware, the animators and director can actually control the line thickness of scenes because across the majority of the show, it's just a filter that can be dialed up and down in intensity. In this case, the thickness is hand-drawn, it's outlined and then filled in like back in the analog days. It looks great, and I'm really curious as to who's responsible for it. At first I thought it might be Yamaoka herself, but then this wasn't present in her last episode. I figured maybe it could be a key animator, but then it's too prevalent across the episode to be someone in that role. But then I saw Shintaro Mura is the other assistant AD. Now, if you're not aware, he's an animator who was all over Dragon Ball Super, but I actually didn't discover him until much later thanks to his work on Dragon Ball Heroes. I jumped back through some of his scenes and found thick lines in one of his super scenes, and then looking at the Dragon Quest episodes he did assistant AD work on, I also found lines kind of like that, so maybe it's him. That said, it is an approach that's not uncommon enough that this is some kind of definitive smoking gun, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye out in the future to see if these lines keep popping up wherever Mura appears. The only thing really left to say about this week at this point is that Yamamoto's Minotaur cut in the opening was replaced by a still, that is, a very nicely drawn still, but being static does kind of nuke the momentum and everything either side of it is moving. I don't know, man. I don't really like being a downer for a whole video, but that's sometimes the unfortunate reality of being an animation channel. I host Totally Not a Podcast with T. Hallams and Totally Not Mark each week. We really focus in on the story, and I was so positive about how much I enjoyed this episode, but the truth is the production was just not great, and so this video then has to be the opposite of that. Thankfully, the next episode preview does look fucking insane, so I know I'll be back on the hype train next video, and hopefully Daima won't have too many more episodes like this. But for now, I will just say thank you for watching and enduring this short but miserable breakdown this week. I do hope you found it educational and hopefully enjoyable, and if you did, then please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you next time for one hell of an episode.